Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with journalist and author Rachel Shabi and Home Affairs editor at The Times, Matt Dathan. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages, let us take a look, shall we? Starting with the Metro. Leave means leave. The Metro echoes the words of Theresa May on Brexit as demands grow for Boris Johnson to go now rather than wait for a successor to be elected. But as the Mirror puts it, Mr Johnson is determined to cling on for one last party. The Telegraph leads with the fears of some senior Conservatives that not leaving Downing Street immediately leaves the country in a state of paralysis. Johnson quits, defiant to the end, is how the Financial Times describes the Prime Minister's resignation speech in Downing Street. Downfall, that is the front of the Eye, which says at least 11 Tories are now considering standing for the party leadership. This is the Times. Johnson throws in the towel, quoting his words, "When the herd moves, it moves." The Guardian keeps it simple, a dejected-looking Mr Johnson with the headline, "It's over." The Mail, however, carries an article asking what the hell have they done, with Tory MPs being warned they may rue the day they forced Mr Johnson out. The Express is in mournful tone too. "Thank you, Boris. You gave Britain back its freedom." While the Sun shows Mr Johnson hugging his family after quitting with the headline, "Kiss goodbye." And finally, the Star spoofs Mr Johnson's legacy in a diary highlighting his parties, new wallpaper and his dog Dylan as his legacy in full. Well, don't forget, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch the programme. So let's return to our guests then. We're joined by Rachel Shabi and Matt Dathan. Matt, what a day. I mean, extraordinary set of newspapers. You know, it'll all go down in history. You never see half the payroll of government resigning to force a Prime Minister to quit. And where are we at now? It's almost over, is the headline in The Guardian.
Yes, that's right, and you've got so many different strands to this story, haven't you? You've got the Telegraph telling us that there's real concerns in the hierarchy of the Conservative Party, urging him to go sooner rather than wait on until October with a long, drawn-out battle, you know, where all the divisions of the party are going to be aired throughout the summer, which is usually a very quiet time. And then you've obviously got the Mirror and the Guardian almost in celebratory mood, and the Mail in mournful mood. So it's a real array of stories, and it's one of those historic days where we'll all go and buy the paper tomorrow, I hope.
Yes, the Eye, downfall, that is what it is. We were talking with our political editor, Beth Rigby, about how this man has always been in the wings, waiting for this job. You know, he had it all. He had an 80-seat majority. He could have gone on, and yet mistake after mistake led to a headline like that, Rachel.
Well, yes, because it turns out that the emperor has no clothes. And so the question is, what made us all think that he had these fantastic golden robes for the last 3 years? What was it that gave him his stonking majority? And so I'm less concerned by the man himself. I'm more concerned by the people who enabled his rise, knowing full well exactly the measure of the man, knowing full well that he was entirely unsuited to be the Prime Minister of this country, knowing full well the kind of havoc that he would unleash on this country before it came to a spectacular collapse, as it inevitably would. And so, fine, we've got rid of this clown Prime Minister, but we haven't got rid of any of the political or media system that enabled it. And so what's to stop this happening again and again and again?
That wasn't necessarily my question. I know you want to have a general election and a Labour government, but that wasn't... today is a sort of, let's focus on Boris day.
I'm focusing on Boris. I'm focusing on Boris right now. I'm telling you that the emperor has no clothes, that we knew it from the start. We knew all his failings from the start.
Okay.
And so why was he enabled to reach such heights in the first place?
Well, let's look at the Metro. I'm going to jump ahead. Leave means leave. He's quoting Theresa May. And it was, in fact, Brexit that delivered him here. The failure of Theresa May, but also the casting asunder of the way that politics was normally run. This was a man who got the Red Wall, he got the Shires. That is not normal in British politics, and that's why he's here.
It's not normal in Tory politics either, in the places he won. And I think that's going to be the struggle for the person who's going to replace him, to win back, to keep those seats. And I think, are the Tory party really going to think that they're going to win an 80-seat majority, having gone through what we've gone through with the cost of living crisis? It's going to be so tough, and I don't know why people want to be Prime Minister tonight. But as we're seeing on the front of the Metro, I think Theresa May could have written that. It's almost mocking Boris Johnson from his predecessor.
And well, let's stay with that theme, shall we, and go to the Mirror. We'll return to some of the other papers that you've mentioned already. The Daily Mirror suggesting he's there for one more party. The idea, they say, that he's actually got a wedding party. He had a very small wedding during parts of the COVID pandemic of just 30 people. And he's got a big do planned at Chequers, and that's where he's standing on. Denied, I have to say, by the people in the building behind us, Rachel.
Well, yes, so that's exactly what the Mirror is reporting. And we don't know if it's true or not, but we can certainly say that it's in keeping or in character with a man who really has, milked the position of Prime Minister for all it's worth financially. We heard all sorts of rumours about, extravagantly priced wallpaper, and then there was, £150,000 treehouse that he was going to build in Chequers for his child before more sober advisors said that maybe not such a good idea. So the man obviously has extravagant taste, but this, coming hot on the heels of Partygate, is going to stick in the throat for many.
Except
I would have thought.
A lot of people will be trying to have weddings again. Do you know what I mean? It's not a bad thing to want to celebrate your wedding.
Chequers at the taxpayer's expense, though, will they?
It's a very fitting end, isn't it? If he gets there, though, I'm sure we'll come on to whether he'll actually get to the 30th of July.
Indeed so. Well, let's go back to the Telegraph, shall we? And those Conservative papers who've either chosen to or not support him. Let's take a look at the Telegraph if we can. And what they say now is kind of almost critical to what happens next, isn't it? Absolutely. The PM's long goodbye leaves the UK in a state of paralysis. And that has left disquiet, it has to be said, amongst a number of Conservative MPs, Matt, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating on the front of the Daily Telegraph tomorrow is they're reporting that Michael Gove is one of those MPs who is trying to urge Boris Johnson to step down as soon as Monday. I don't think Boris Johnson's going to be taking any calls from Michael Gove, having sacked him this time last night. But it is interesting that someone as senior as Michael Gove, who could be a kingmaker, let's remember, in the next contest, is urging him to go. And that's back on the back of Sir John Major earlier called on Graham Brady to change the rules because it's going to be unsustainable to have Boris Johnson camped in number 10 for the next 2 months.
It just seems a little bit unsustainable that Boris Johnson would be taking Michael Gove's phone calls, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
After sacking him yesterday.
Yeah.
But the problem is, isn't it, the British Constitution does not allow for an interim Prime Minister unless, as Andrew Bridgen suggests, he says he's too ill to do it. That was his suggestion. And he steps aside, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the Constitution, but what I do know is that the Conservatives have not exactly been faithful adherents of constitutional law or ministerial codes in the last few years, so I would just say that. But actually, I'm not one to very often praise the Telegraph, but they do have quite a substantive front page today. They make the point that there are so many things looming in the next few months. Sure, Parliament will be in recess in a few weeks, but we have this horrible cost of living crisis coming down the tracks. Martin Lewis, the financial expert, was speaking to Newsnight last night, and he said we're looking at potentially 10 million people being plunged into poverty over the next few months, and certainly by the colder months. On top of that, we've got strike action rolling out over the next weeks and months, chaos at the airports, as the Telegraph points out. The country cannot afford for the Tories to have this yet another leadership election while all this is going on. And so that does raise the question of who actually is in charge, who is going to address all these very urgent issues.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a situation almost where the civil servants are running the country, are we not? At one point today, there was nobody in education. Now the teachers are threatening a pay strike. Who makes the decisions on their salaries, for example? So we're in this really strange period now. And I read that the only power the 1922 committee has, who have a new election, obviously, early next week, is to expedite this process as swiftly as possible.
Yeah, I think they do actually have quite a lot of power because they can not only expedite or change the rules, but they can also decide to hold 2 ballots on a day, because you've only actually got 9 days from next Tuesday, I think, until the following Thursday when Parliament is up. So they've got to do it in 9 days. So I think then they put 2 people forward, and I think they can also expedite the process for the members deciding. But I think this idea that some are making, that let's just do what we did in 2016 when it was a coronation of Theresa May, I think that the members would be very angry with that and not being given a choice, and I think that would cause a longer-term revolt in the Conservative Party than actually having a quicker contest over the summer.
Yes. Well, lights going off just then, it's been a long day for them as well, hasn't it, for many people here. So the runners and riders, let's talk about that tonight, shall we? Tom Tugendhat in the Telegraph, writing in the paper, has said he's led before, he wants to do it again. He's got the backing possibly of some of the moderate wing of the party, the Damien Greens of this world, Steve Baker, in the Brexit camp, also putting his name in. But the problem is, I suppose, for the Conservatives, they need to decide who they want to be. How do they win the election? Do they work backwards from that point, and who might do that for them, Rachel?
It's a good question, and I think the trouble is that we're looking at a party that has refashioned itself in Boris Johnson's image. So it has veered so far to the right. It's become a party of, hard right Brexiteers. Boris Johnson appointed and allowed to rise people who were loyal over and above anything else, regardless of any other talent or lack thereof. And so the candidates to begin with, the people who are throwing their hat in the ring aren't exactly, blessed with the most incredible leadership talents, because that's not why Boris Johnson promoted them. And meanwhile, the membership in itself is pretty right-wing. I think over 50% believe that Islam is a threat to British way of life. Over 50% thought Trump made a good US president. So they are pretty far out to the right as well. And both those things seem to suggest that that is the sort of leader that the Conservatives are going to end up with.
The Financial Times playing it like some of the others. Johnson quits, defiant to the end. Picture him here, obviously, earlier today, just before lunchtime. And then let's take a look at the Daily Star. Boris Johnson's legacy in full. Got a cute dog, good party organiser, and nice wallpaper. The legacy of Boris Johnson, Matt, your view?
That's quite brutal, and I think you could be a little bit fairer and say that he has led Europe, I think, on the war in Ukraine. I think he's won a lot of plaudits, and you've seen that from President Zelensky today even. And I think the vaccine rollout will go down as a legacy for him as well. And the Conservative Party think that he did very well in making the decision just before Christmas and the New Year not to go into a lockdown when other European countries were. So I think he did. I think they could add some positives, some achievements to that. But there's a long list of on the other side, isn't there?
20 seconds, Rachel. Apologies for the shortness.
There is a long list on the other side, and the families of those bereaved from COVID-19 over the last few years will have a lot to say about this, about how much pain and misery he has caused them. Tens of thousands of lives needlessly lost, according to Parliament's own investigations. That will be his legacy, along with authoritarian laws, including anti-protest laws and electoral laws, sending vulnerable people to Rwanda. Those things will be his legacy.
That you may have carried on for a bit longer. Rachel, Matt, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.